Hello, Jessica.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, there we go. Wow, thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. Thank you for offering.
Well, I have hints that you've got a great story to tell.
It's funny when I saw the invite come across with Jessica's story, my mind immediately went to the years and years of mediocrity and complacency and struggling with trying to figure out if I had a story, feeling resentful for um, not feeling as though I did and didn't serve a greater purpose, didn't have anything to bring other people, right? Because that's ultimately what everyone wants is this connection and purpose for being here and existing.
Yeah.
And little did a past self know just just what that wish would bring. Um, but it shows you truly don't know what's in store for you, what the universe has, what a higher being has for you. You just have to do what you can to prepare yourself and be in each moment as it occurs, and the the rest will take care of itself.
So take me back to the introduction of Jessica's life. How did it begin?
Looking back, it I was really lucky growing up as a kid. Yes, I had um, a bigger family. There were 6 of us, and so for my folks, it was a bit difficult to make ends meet. We certainly weren't swimming with luxuries, but as a kid, I didn't need those things. I learned I have friends and I have siblings and family to play with. And I had both parents together the entirety of my life, which was a huge blessing that most don't have. And two loving parents at that. And looking back again, that just contributed to this thought process of I'm not unique or special or different because I have nothing to complain about. Like I have a really great story so far. There's no tragedy or sorrow or loss or nothing exciting that really would bring spice to life. Um, I had and two older half siblings and sister and brother from my mother's prior marriage, and then she had met and married my dad, and had myself and a younger brother, where we'd all grown up together, and our our home that got remodeled over the years, but it worked for us, and it was this great little nucleus of people to come home to every day.
What are some of your favorite memories from growing up?
I was and still am huge into sports. And so I would have the opportunity to go out back with my younger brother and my dad, and we would throw the football around and learn how to run routes. And I played basketball uh, probably about as early as I could walk. I think there are photos from Jessica wobbling around with a basketball. And so I'd go in the front yard and shoot hoops with my dad and learn how to play. And uh, we had a small town. There were only 48 in my graduating class. So it was a very tight knit community to grow up in. That back in the day was safe. You were out until the streetlights came on. And then at that point, mom started calling around to figure out which home everybody was at. Um, and so having the opportunity to just kind of ride our bikes around town and go hang out at the playground or park and um, just exist and not have any kind of care, um, and whatever was, the topic of discussion, what happened at school or at the football game that weekend was just the most pressing matter, uh, to
If I asked you, how about maybe a sad memory or not such a good memory from childhood? Could you find one?
absolutely. So growing up, my older sister, had made some really, challenging choices and got herself connected with the wrong group and, found herself into some legal trouble while she was still in school. And we were, about 5 or 6 years apart. So I was old enough to be able to have the memories and recollections and start to see it, but not quite old enough to really process what it all meant. It certainly wasn't talked about in our home,
Mm. How old
but
were you?
that would have been middle school, so what, 13, 14 years old. So still trying to figure the world and myself out.
Yeah.
And she had gotten into some trouble with the law and had gotten to the point where she felt it'd just be easier if she had taken her own life. And I was upstairs and heard screaming and yelling and started to make my way down to figure out what was going on, to find my mother tackling my sister to try to keep her from leaving and going into the basement and having to call the cops to come to get her to a place where she'd be okay and safe. And just watching that unfold was horrifying. And one of those moments that for me was definitely defining as a person to realize I I don't want to be that. I don't want to get to that point. I don't want to put that type of experience, my parents through that experience or my siblings through that experience. It was very monumental for me growing up and being
Mm.
at that point of self-identity and having that type of experience.
All right. So now moving on with that story, with that timeline, then what happens?
So Jessica's shift went into school and sports. It was, I'm going to focus myself into my grades. I want to know what I'm doing. I want to learn as much as I can. And thankfully for me, that came relatively easy. So then with all the free time, it was going into sports and how I can stay active. And it was a great connection opportunity for me with my dad. So it was definitely something I wanted to pour into, and found myself playing basketball and volleyball for all 4 years of high school and excelling at them pretty well. And it was just this opportunity to be good at something, to show that there's pride in our family name and in who I am. And everybody likes to be good at things. So it brought that sense of self satisfaction and self joy to get me through that period. It's interesting looking back in a time where, especially for young women, there's so many challenges in trying to figure out who you are. And so much of your peers plays a really big influence in that.
Mm.
And looking back, that was something that I never quite understood why I was different or why my thoughts were different, but I really just didn't care. And I am so grateful for it. I don't know where the thought process came from or how I got there. Um, but I just had this mentality of you're going to do what you want to do, and that's good for you. And I'm going to do what I want to do, and that's what's best for me. And if they're different, and if you don't like it, well, okay, that's your choice. I'm going to focus this route. Um, and that definitely led to challenges in not fitting the mold. So then not having to fit in a certain clique or area, because with a town that small, that definitely was the case. Um, of not being just what others expected me to be. Um, but that didn't seem to matter to me. I
Where
had
do you
found,
think that came from? Because usually the story is you get influenced by friends, people around you, you want to fit in. Where do you
Mhm.
think that came from in you? Not for your friends to do whatever they want to do and it doesn't affect you, like you don't need that element to fit in.
Yeah, I I saw what influence does through my sister. And that was the only part that was really discussed about in our household was, well, if you would stop hanging around so and so. Well, if you wouldn't be around so and so, you never would have gotten into this situation. So that was the message that I heard secondhand in my household. And it brought about this idea that, you become who you hang around, which is very true.
Yes, yes. It's different
And
when they tell us this, but for you to experience and see how serious
yeah,
it is. Yeah.
really to a level of extreme that most people don't have to, right? It's more of those internal self esteem or inner conflict resolution skills that can really become challenging through some of those difficult relationships, not lifelong choices that you make that impact who you want to be as an adult and
Yeah.
forevermore in life. So it it was difficult, but it ended up being something that was so beneficial for me
Mm.
to be that extreme, to go, this is powerful. There is a lot of weight in this, and who you associate with is a very important decision. It doesn't mean you're not kind to people around you, but who you let into that inner circle to influence you, that's a big deal. And that's not something to be chosen lightly.
So how do you keep friends without letting them in at that young age? How do you still be friends with them, hang out with them, see what they're doing, understand that that's not what you want to be doing, and still be friends? Did that work out well?
I found when there's that point of acknowledgement of whether there was mutual aligned values, morals, beliefs, interests, um, those were the pieces that made it easy for the friendships to continue because we were both coming from that same place and that same desire to watch each other grow, help each other um, develop the right way, instill confidence and encouragement. Where when those pieces weren't aligned, it was okay, I still care about you and I'm still interested in you as a person. Um, but I'm not going to allow there to be that next level of vulnerability. And looking back, I didn't realize it at the point, but people are incredibly self centered. And so to just ask about them and what they're doing uh, were things I did without necessarily having to volunteer my own pieces. Because people are typically very self centered and not willing to take the moment to go, well, what about you? How are you?
Or
Uh,
as friendships can go on just by you keeping that going. It's all about them, so they don't see that there's anything missing.
exactly. Yeah. They felt fulfilled in their friendship and recognizing that there wasn't anything missing on my part because that wasn't something that I saw the need to reciprocate.
Mm.
And so that worked as it was. And ultimately, a good majority of those, of course, fizzled and faded because I did leave the area, which was already something that was unusual for those in that area.
Okay. What prompted you to leave? What's that factor? Or am I jumping ahead? What
No,
comes next?
no, I think it's looking back, there was definitely this expectation in that area of you go to school, you find a high school sweetheart, or maybe you don't, which case, fine, you can go to college for a few years and make yourself feel good. And then you come back and you take over the family farm or get into the family business or marry someone who fits one of those two molds. You have your family, and that is the extent of your life. And you just live here, and that is all that exists of you. I never felt like that was what I was supposed to be. I always had this inkling that there should be something more. I don't feel as though somebody's life is already determined for them. There is some choice that we can make in that does influence what it looks like. And so I didn't get out of state for college, but went a couple hours away to get me out of that small town mentality. But I had struggled for quite a while because there was still that expectation of that's what life should look like. And so I kept trying to fit ultimately this square peg into a round hole of going, okay, well, now I'm at college, but I still have to find a partner. I still have to find a way to fit this mold, to be able to settle down, have to do all of these, hit all the milestones that society expects for you and sets for you. And for me growing up with your influences set for you of why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you here? What's going on with this? Excuse me, you're 22 and you're not married. What is wrong with you? Uh,
Yeah. Well,
and it definitely helped me realize that for me in my early 20s, there was a lot of struggle in that identity of I was okay in high school to say, I'm going to do what I want to do and be who I want to be. But I didn't know what that was outside of my routine of school, sports, and that was it. And of course, in college, you start to try to figure that out and who you want to be as a human being and a person. And um, it was that conflict of not having a clear vision of that and still trying to fit a square peg into a round hole to get to what society expected of me, but knowing there's still something missing and that isn't necessarily the direction I have to go. So it was all of these influences externally and internally that were just at conflict with each other to try to figure it out.
So if you look at that chapter of you being in college, what was kind of like the gist of that, the title of that time in college for you?
Love lost is love learned. There was a lot of heartbreak in those periods trying to make things fit, but ultimately became a great experience to realize who I am as a person, what type of woman I am and want to be, what type of partner I am and want to be, what I will and won't accept within relationships or from others. And that all of those things have reasons and purposes. It it just may not be visible quite right away.
Yeah. Yes. 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 Wow. Okay. Very deep, for a child to get this huge lesson and hold on to it. What happens next?
Really one of the biggest shifts that occurred for me, I'd fallen into the workforce and was still kind of coasting along, trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I had an opportunity from one of the companies I was at to relocate from Michigan down to Texas. And at that point, didn't have serious relationships and was just very much so trying to figure out what else exists. I had just kind of started traveling as well and realizing there's so much more to the world than my little pocket that I had known forever. And had a conversation with the leader, and he said, we want you here. Come do what you're doing. Come do it for us in Texas. And it was the first time that I really didn't think or analyze. I said, sure. And I, to that point, been very close with my family, spent a lot of time with them, and realized there has to be this separation for me to figure out who Jessica is outside of my last name, outside of the town I grew up in, outside of even the state I'm familiar with. There has to be this separation because I am my own individual. I am my own being. And ultimately, all things will pass. So, who am I? What does that look like? Who am I living for? What choices am I making? And took the leap and found myself across the country, my mid 20s by myself in a town I had never really been to, with going from graduating with 48 kids to the DFW Metroplex.
Wow. Wow. How did that feel? The excitement, the adjustment.
Yes, all of the expected and anticipated emotions and feelings. There was fear and hesitancy and concerns of regret for wondering if I made the right decision, along with excitement and potential and opportunity that had made itself apparent for me. And it was really interesting on my first weekend here. My folks had helped me move down, so they were here, and the townhome that I was in did a welcoming kind of party just for their summer kickoff, whatever it was. And I was like, okay, great, sure, let's go, people. And so we went down and had their cocktail hour and just kind of mingling with folks. And it was there I got talking to somebody and they said, "Oh, well, there's, this Packers bar across the street. You're a Packers fan." And little did I know then that's where I would spend a lot of the football season and have immediate friendships and relationships and find my own little Cheers-esque bar that brought this piece of home to this really big area and gave me this sense of calm that the universe knew I would need in such a chaotic place. To real You can still go somewhere where you are known just because you are now in this sea of people feeling very much like a little fish in a big pond. You still can be known, you still can be seen, you still can have relationships. And it gave this great balance very quickly for me in my move that I truly believe is why I'm even still here, to recognize that I can belong and exist in this place, as large and massive as it is. Because I'm not somebody who goes out, so to meet people or make friends is not my scene.
Wow. Wow. So it's lovely that you had this almost like a welcoming committee, that the universe put for you. So like, please stay. We're going to make this as easy as possible. But it was still a transition. What would, looking back at it, first of all, how long has it been since then?
That was in 2017, so it'll be 8 years.
All
Yep.
right. All right. So looking back at it, where were the rough spots? What was the thing that was maybe the toughest about that move?
It was, what was that? About 5 months in, I had gone back to visit for my dad's birthday and came back. And that was the first wave of homesickness that I'd finally experienced. I had I was riding the high of excitement and moving up until that point. And then it hit of this, I'm not with them anymore. Being able to see my dad, who obviously I'd had a very close relationship with growing up, being able to see my niece, who had been born just a couple years prior, and watching her grow up, and just seeing most of my family still all very close and nuclear, and being the one outlier. Uh,
You're
it
over there.
Did I do this? Was this right? I missed them. And again, the timing of it, having this other family that was being built and cultivated, and these relationships that were being strengthened during that period, again, just seemed to bring this balance that the universe knew I needed of, yes, you have that family, and you also can have this one. And they're here and they love you too. And it helped me get over that hump of, but I just want to go home.
Wow, wonderful. So looking at that, as difficult as it was, and the hesitancy, and did I do the right thing, and I miss my family, what made you understand or know or feel like, but I want to still stay here?
A lot of it for me was intense prayer and seeking out the Lord to ensure I'm following his direction and will for my life. That had been a guiding post for me through high school and college, to ensure that there's alignment there, because I may have ideas and plans, but they're certainly not as grand as what I believe he has for me. And ultimately, being here and having that time to process and realizing there's more, and that whatever someone believes, for me, that there's that intrinsic depth that within yourself, if you give yourself an opportunity to get in touch with it, what's right and wrong in any given moment or situation. And as I had those moments of reflection, it was, you're not done here. I didn't know why, and I didn't know for what purpose, and had no understanding of it logically, being a very uh, intellectual, cerebral person, having to trust this gut spirit instinct of like, you're not done. It was very challenging, but that was where it came from, was this knowing that I'm not supposed to be there. I'm supposed to be right here. Still don't know quite why, but this is where I'm supposed to be.
All right. Wow. Okay, this is getting very interesting. What happens next?
At that point, the company that had moved me down was incredibly toxic. So not only was I struggling with these challenges of wanting to go home and feeling homesick, now the one thing I did have for my sense of income and stability for just me uh, was also being challenged and really pushed to its limits. And by the spring of that next year, I'd had another company reach out to me and said, "Hey, we'd love to have you come join us. Let's talk." And went through that process and said, "Sure, yes, great, fine, let's do it." Uh, and found myself then with a new organization, starting a new job, doing something completely different. And I had been with my prior company for about 3.5 years. Uh, so that was different. And then just even getting to the point of I'm starting a new job and by myself. And what if it doesn't last? I'm the only one with an income and all of these thoughts and fears and worries. And took the leap, and it's the company I've been with for the last 7 years now and have had so much professional growth and personal growth in that time frame, and really was able to get with a company that then supported me through what unknowing to me would be the hardest years of my life, and just having that space to come back to, and that support has been huge.
Okay. I feel chills. Take us into that story, please.
Um, so it started with my current company in April of 2018, and it was a lot. It was to learn a lot to learn, a lot where I saw personal growth and being challenged in what I knew. Being an HR professional, up to that point in my career, everything was black and white and right and wrong and yes or no. It was easy. I knew all of the answers. And I got to this organization where everything is gray. And they go, well, it's kind of a shade of black if you look at it this way. And if you ask this question, then you'll realize it's got a little more white in this area than you may. And it was such an incredible learning opportunity to give me this different perspective of how do I ask better questions, not just to get to the answer, but to genuinely understand where people are coming from, what they're trying to solve for, what their motivation or desire is, and to just be able to connect at a different level with people, then put me in a better position to support them or give them the answer they did need. And it was interesting to find that in those, first couple of the first year with Benchmark, that I kind of started to feel this stability of, okay, I've got a good job. I see my career switching. And something that I even started looking at was adopting, going, my life isn't going to fit in that same linear path that I grew up being told it would. But what's to say I don't have control over that, that I don't have a say in that. Um, When I was a teenager, I had had this pressing that for some reason I would adopt a child when I was older. I didn't know why or when. And as a teenager, my brain went, well, like 5 or 6 years old, they'll be in school, so I can still work. This very naive thought process that parenting only exists from, 5 to 8 the next morning. Um, but that had been pressed on my heart, which is interesting because I had never been around nor known anybody adopted um, until I got older and had actually gone home for a visit uh, a while after starting my new job and went to visit my grandparents, who I was very close with and had spent a lot of time with during summers. And got talking to them and had brought up the idea that I was potentially looking to adopt. And it was then that I learned at that time my see, 87, 88-year-old grandfather actually was adopted. Had no idea. Did not learn until very late in life. Um, and it just kind of gave that affirmation to me of, okay, now's the time to start looking and let's see what this looks like. And I had gotten back to Texas and started going through the process of connecting with different adoption agencies and the foster care system here in Dallas because there are so many children that just deserve love. And that was something that was important to me. had conversations with people, and we got close a couple times and things just fell apart. And I said, okay, if this is not it, then this is not it. And it will happen when it's supposed to happen. I have faith in that. And I will be able to love a child that needs it and just kind of let that piece go. And that would have been 2019 into early 2020. Um, and at the start of 2021, uh, things really started to shift. And I saw my grandfather, who I had been very close with, the one that I now know was adopted. His health started declining pretty rapidly. And it was May 13th of 2021 where uh, the spiral of life, that I call it, really started to come into play.
What happened on that day?
So that was the day that he had passed away, unfortunately. He was 91, but up till that point, I really hadn't experienced loss. I had a lot of great things, and what was challenging to me were just these internal, almost self-imposed challenges. So there really wasn't this understanding of how to cope with external challenges. So it took a while, and that was something I knew was coming, but still hard to face that actual loss. You can anticipate grief and mentally try to prepare yourself the best you can, but until it happens, you never know. Unfortunately for me, that was not the end of it. Uh, 13 days later, on May 26th, the my longtime partner of 6 years at that point, who had moved down to Texas and actually then was stayed with me for a while, um, was arrested and unexpectedly then just pulled out of my life. And I realized there was a lot of secrecy there, and almost an entirely separate life that was being lived that I had no knowledge of. And it was this very, again, abrupt change and loss that was completely unexpected on top of what had just happened 2 weeks earlier. And it was this time of trying to cope and process and come to terms with what life would now look like. Um, Losing not one, but two people who I was very close with, who meant a lot to me in different ways, uh, and had gone through the summer figuring out what that would look like and relearning who I am and what's important to me and the person that I want to be and what choice I make from these things that happened. Because ultimately, that's what we get. We have no influence over those external pieces, but what we do have is the choice of what we do from them, what we do with them, what type of attitude we take, what action we take each day is what we do have control over. And I got myself kind of put my feet underneath of me. And it was just a few months later in October where I had gotten a call from my sister who had just moved from Michigan out to Montana. She had made the big life change herself of realizing there's more, and uh, got a call from her where I answered, and it was actually a surgeon on the other end who said that my sister was going in to have fluid drained from around her heart, and that she had designated me as the caretaker of my niece should anything happen to her. And everything just stopped in this moment of what? And when I got her on the phone, she had shared with me that she had just been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer at 35 years old. and this was what they had to do. So I was able to um, grab the things I needed and head up to Montana for a few weeks to be there for her and help get her packed up and take care of my niece while she still had school and was trying to adjust to moving her life across country as um, a young 6-year-old, and help them find this sense of normalcy and have these really hard conversations around what we knew was coming. That
What did you find when you got there?
it was this odd mixture of immense responsibility, having to immediately step in that place and play mom to my niece, which was very different and new. Um, and the challenge of playing caretaker and support to my sister, who um, was going through her own challenges and worries and things, and trying to then also still process and figure out what this meant and how I felt about it and what this would mean in the future, and trying to wrap my brain around the thought that it's very probable within a year at that point that I'll be a mom. Like, it just, mm, it all became very real in a different way very quickly. And I hadn't anticipated that.
Wow.
I was able to help her get moved back to Michigan to be closer to friends in our support system where most of her family still was, and then had to come back down to Texas and immediately realized I have opportunity to plan and prepare, which most people don't. So my brain went into its very cerebral, logical, intellectual avenue of, let's put pediatricians in place. What kind of doctors are in the area? What kind of counselors are available for children? What does their time frame look like? What is the school enrollment from? All of these logistics that I knew would be coming at some point in time, I was able to work through and start to put into place. One, it helped me start to wrap my brain around what was coming and the reality of what I was facing. And the other, to recognize that if all of the transactional logistics are settled, it's one less thing I have to worry about when my niece is here. And I can instead then use that time and energy to support her, to love on her, to be there for her, and to process my own grief, knowing it'd mean the loss of my sister. It was relatively quickly. Her diagnosis had come in the end of October, and by February 1st of 2022, she had passed away. So, of course, since she and my niece were still up in Michigan, I had to shift and was working from Michigan for was that about 6 weeks, to deal with final arrangements and the estate, and had to go through the court process to get guardianship of my niece and get everything processed there and taken care of, which was very different and eye-opening and a part of the process that I had no knowledge of and had to learn very quickly.
It was like what?
Uh, well, when there's a will, how do you deal with probate and what filings have to be done as the executor of an estate? And how do you then go through a guardianship with a child, while her dad is not in the picture? He's still on the birth certificate, so he still has legal rights. So trying to navigate that relationship with this person who I'd had my own opinion of based
Mm.
on what I'd seen throughout the entirety of her life. Um, and just trying to, in all of that, help this young child who just lost her mom, her sole caretaker, process my sister's loss, be there for my parents who were grieving the loss of their child. It was this immense, immense level of responsibility to be there for everyone.
At being 6 years old, or maybe she's 7 at that point, I don't know. How did you how did she, or your perception of her, how did she handle what was going on? For example, when you went to Montana to begin with, was she aware what's happening with her mom? The whole shift, the whole move back to Michigan. How did this young child handle all of this?
Well, I'd had a conversation with my sister when I went out to Montana of what what have you told Cal, which is my niece. She said, I've not told her anything and I'm not going to, and I don't want you to. I will tell her this was a vacation and we will go back home. And that is the end of it. And those were her wishes. So that was what she had chosen. And I was going to honor and respect that. When she was then actually passing the end of January, I had gone up and was with Cal where she was. And I had kind of asked her the one day, I said, hey, do you know what's happening? And she looked at me square in the eyes. We were sitting on bed and she said, yeah, Mama's sick from cancer and she's dying. And when she dies, I'm going to come live with you in Texas. I said, okay. And how do you feel about that? She goes, I'm sad, but I'm excited to go somewhere new. I said, okay. And now the extent of it, I was met with just this child who was so aware and so in tune and just so smart, regardless of what people would or would not say to her. That desire to be curious, to listen, to know and understand and pick up on things she had gotten. And as everything happened, she still just had this understanding of this is just what happens. And it's sad. And I can feel sad and be sad, but I get to choose whether I'm sad or happy. And that same concept that it had taken me decades to come to and realize she was living at 6 years old. Um, she processed very well. Excuse me. And for us, it was learning each other, learning the dynamics of who we are now, not as an aunt and a niece, but as that and a mom and a daughter, and realizing I am a different person than my sister, that while we were sisters, we're markedly different people in what we believe, how we speak and communicate, how we support others, what's important to us in our lives. They couldn't be almost more different. And so for Cal, it was understanding that what she had known is not there anymore. And unfortunately for her at that age, she now has to learn a whole new person and how to navigate that and what that looks like. Um, we'd had our time in Michigan, and after 6 weeks, we're able to come back down. And our biggest priority during the entirety of that time was, what are you feeling? And starting to help give names to emotions, to help identify and take that moment of introspection to go, what am I feeling? I might be lashing out verbally, but I don't know why. So let me take a pause and figure out where that's coming from so that we can then, one, identify what it is. And then from there, start to shift into what is a healthy way to process this? What is a better way to cope with this than yelling, than screaming. And those may be the answers at times, but how do we do it in a way that doesn't hurt ourselves or hurt others so that we can express what we need to um, without causing harm? And it it ends up coming back to bite me because, well, when you teach a child to do something very well, they shift and hold you to that same level of accountability. Where sometimes I don't want to answer that question. But like anyone, you learn by example. And so it became this very mutual place of shared questions and shared conversations. And for her to learn what it looks like, it means I have to do it as well. And so in those moments of I'm so angry at the world putting me here is a very real conversation, and finding a way to explain that where it's age appropriate without putting the weight of the world on her, feeling as though it's her responsibility to own or fix, um, was something that I realized I had learned in my career and had the blessing of being prepared for over those years of how do I say it in a way that I mean without causing these harmful effects, without putting the sense of responsibility on her, without making her feel as though she has to own the solution. Um, and it became this really healthy dynamic of processing and realizing if we identify what we're feeling, it gives us a starting point to work from. It doesn't mean our feelings are the end, just gives us a place to start.
Wow. Deep lessons that you're putting into play as it's happening and not 30 years later. It's like you're getting your answers and you're becoming your answers. I think that's lovely for both of you. Now, some years have passed. She's growing. How do you see your relationship with her? Do you feel like she sees you as a mom or as auntie who took mom's place? And do you feel like she is your child or is she your sister's child that you're taking care of?
Yeah. It took a while to get there, especially since the first year or the year that my sister passed, uh, Mother's Day, which we celebrated down here, also fell on my late sister's birthday. So not only was my first Mother's Day also then her birthday and just a few months removed from everything that had happened, um, it was a challenge. She had shifted and started calling me mama shortly after we had moved here, which took some processing for me. But over the years, it has become this relationship of a mother and daughter. And there's still this acknowledgement and awareness of Mama A and who she was. And questions come up from time to time, and I answer truthfully in a way that's age appropriate. And in those moments where I can't, I share with her those are things we'll talk about as you get a little older, where we can talk about some more complex things. And she understands and knows I've not lied to her. I don't intend to do so. But sometimes that means the answer is not right now,
Yeah.
because sometimes that is the answer. And having that transparency and honesty has created such a strong connection and bond to know this is a place of safety. This is a place of love. This is a place of shared respect and a desire more than anything for her to flourish as a person. That doesn't mean I'm always her friend, because as a parent, that becomes a very important part of it. But even as we sit at, for her now being at 9, uh, to hear her talk to other people or to make comments when we're in public of, wow, mama, that parent really should tell that child how to behave. I thank you for doing that. And the moments of knowing that as I've explained to her the reason these difficult choices have to be made as a parent, or where there has to be correction as a parent, and giving her the understanding of why I'm doing those things, it's connected for her and she gets it and she understands it. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt and that there aren't challenges and frustrations in the moment. Part of life. Nobody likes being corrected or adjusted, but she gets it. She understands why. And then retrospectively can look back and be grateful for those moments. And it is so encouraging as a parent to be like, wow, you're 9 and you understand why I have to do hard things. Like, I'm in my 30s and I still don't understand why some of my parents did it. But we talk about it and we give the space both for our feelings to allow them to be felt and then to circle back when we're both at a place of calm and understanding to then dig into it and dissect it and talk about why and how it can be done better. Because even as a parent, I make mistakes. I fail. I lose my temper sometimes. And there's that ownership too of where I fall and having to circle back and going, I missed the mark here and that's not okay. And I'm sorry. And show that reality of the title of mom or dad or boss or friend. The title and relationship does not matter. It still comes down to who we are as people and how we treat other people. And we always have an opportunity to own that and continue to strive to be better at that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm loving this. It's interesting. I would think you'd have to wait way later in life to be able to look back and start to piece together the story. I love how you're piecing your story together as you're doing it. These stitches in the blanket and this quilt that you're making, and they're all making sense as you lay them down. I love that aspect of this. What would you say has been your greatest challenge so far in terms of this shift into parenthood?
It is that constant struggle of remembering she is her own person with her own strengths, weaknesses, characteristics, skill sets. And my responsibility as a parent is to help her flourish and nurture in those. It is not to impose what I want. It is not to create a replica. It is not to direct, but support. And that takes very, very intentional, conscious thought every moment of every day. And there are mistakes and there are failures and there are successes and wins where I get to watch her start to flourish, or I get to see a skill set that she has, like gymnastics, and watch her light up and her passion just boil over. Um, and finding ways to help encourage and build that. The uh, US Olympic team was here in Fort Worth this past year doing a tour, and to be able to take her there to watch her idols in person just brought the Christmas morning joy across her face and helped me realize I could care less about being here at this moment. It's very cool. I like watching athletes, but this is not my cup of tea. Um, but being able to give her that opportunity and experience and watch how it helps her further develop her passion and interests and solidify what she loves. That's what brings me that joy then. And knowing that's what matters. And this is how I help her as a human being figure out who she is, who she wants to be, and how she can go about achieving it.
Wow, lovely, lovely. From your perspective, what would you say was her hardest part of this transition?
So as she had adjusted down, I wanted to give space because I recognize the very traumatic experience that happened for her.
Yeah.
Uh, Watching her mother deteriorate and then pass is difficult for anybody of any age, let alone a child. And not getting a lot of explanation throughout that process is even worse. So I gave her time to try to normalize and see what stability looks like in this home with me. And there were still things that I was picking up on from a behavioral standpoint that were abnormal, and challenges she was having and delays in milestones that I was seeing based on peers and what I remember of my own life growing up, and what I've seen of those from the times I would babysit and take care of children. And it took a while to realize there was something else going on with her that I just didn't have the answer to. And as I started to explore it and find out what it was, realizing that she is neurodivergent, then this processing phase that I had to go through of what does that look like? How do I help her? How do I support her? Uh, Personally, I'm not somebody who believes in immediate modern day medicine. I very much am a holistic person and realizing there are things of the earth and natural remedies and resources that we can take advantage of in a lot of circumstances. And as a parent, then being faced with this decision of what do I do? Because ultimately, this is my decision as the caretaker of what this looks like and where we go. And exhausted, option after option after option, um, with without success, and getting to the point where we then realized we had to look at medication and having those conversations with her, as the issues continued to compound and become worse over the years, and getting to the point where I explained to her and speak with her about the behavioral challenges we've seen and her acknowledging the behavioral challenges we've seen, her sharing with me what's going on in her head and how she's frustrated not being able to control it or get what she needs to. Um, we'd made that decision and went that route, and then see this entirely different child who has the same joy and excitement and characteristics of the Cal that I know and have loved forever. Now, just in a way that she feels more in control and she has the self awareness in the moment to make good decisions, to be who she wants to be, and build up then that confidence in her of knowing she doesn't have these struggles that she did. And it was a very long journey. That journey really is just starting to finalize that chapter of her story. And it was the first moment of there's not a book for this, there's not a guide. I have to make that decision as the parent. Everything else seemed to that point was very inconsequential in comparison and very easy. Of this hurt her or does this help her? Uh, this was not black and white. This was very gray and required every option being exhausted to know that should there come a day and time where we sit down, her and I, as adults, and she looks me in the eye and says, help me understand why you made that decision. Why did you do what you did? I can, in good faith, share with her my thoughts and logic and reasoning and why I did exactly what I did, and know that I'm happy and stand behind the decisions that I make as a parent. I think it's so easy for us to forget that they are their own person. Yes, we are making decisions for them, but that doesn't mean we one day won't be held accountable for those decisions or that we're exempt from having those questions asked just because I hold that title. No, if more so, there's that accountability and expectation that I've done the right thing or what I believe to be the right thing, and here's why. Doesn't mean I'm not going to make mistakes, so that we're not going to disagree on what that decision was. But here's where I came from and why I made it. And that humility of knowing at any given point I'm trying my best, I think is all anyone can ask for, even as an adult of their parents.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness, Jessica, I'm just so proud of you. It's to catch things as they happen. They say hindsight is 2020, but to be able to bring your full awareness to the here and now as you're making the decisions, as you're creating the stories, is absolutely just beautiful to see. Thank you. Thank you for even sharing this story with us. So much of what you said really resonates with me. I can understand it from a different point of view when we've had these conversations, just from a soul level of what your soul has come here to do. And then looking back at the decisions and the circumstances and to see how somehow it's all been written beforehand. For example, you even knowing as a young person that adoption is something on your radar,
Mhm.
you trying to adopt and it falling through. I think the golden star here for me is you accepting it falling through and allowing it to be what it needs to be.
Mhm.
That you know that you're here with the intention of doing something good in this world and it's going to come to you
Yeah.
in whatever way it needs to come. You're doing your due diligence. And if
Mm.
it's closed door, closed door, closed door, you're not going to stomp your feet and throw the baby out with the bathwater. But
Yeah.
it's that, well, let's see what happens. I've done what I could. And until I get another idea or another opportunity, I'll take action on it. And again, you look at the story and you say, ah, okay, I understand. Because imagine if that adoption had gone through
Mhm.
and what your child now with you needs from you and how much you were able to give her because it was just you and her.
Exactly.
So it just is beautiful. Looking at where your story is right now, what's next?
There's still It is still a new path being forged. Um, in February of 23, I lost my grandmother, um, who I was very close with. And then May 26th of 24, I lost my father, or May 20th of 24, I lost my father. And I got to the point where I looked at the loss I had experienced in the last 4 years, acknowledging, or in the prior 3 years, um, from May 13th of 2021 to May 20th of 2024, I had lost everybody that was close to me. But that despite all of that, I still have the ability to choose how I respond, what I do, what steps I take, how I love others, how I pour into others, where I spend my time thinking, where I allow my brain to go. I get to choose. I make that choice every day. obviously waves of grief will still come. I learned, um, I really don't know where it came from, but very quickly after my father had passed, this concept and idea that there is no end to grief. There's no winning or finishing grief helps put me in this perspective of knowing and acknowledging that, excuse me, um, acknowledging there's no end to grief shifted my perspective and put me in this place of awareness that it is a new chapter. And this part of my life will forever be different. And I am so, so lucky and blessed that that part is still something I get to carry with me. It is, it's very easy to look at the loss of a loved one, a parent, or for my case, my best friend, as this awful, horrible, traumatic experience. And it is. It hurts. But with everything being about perspective, we can then choose to reframe what that looks like and realizing that that loss and that hurt is because of something so wonderful. It is because of such a deep love and joy and all of the good things that happen, which makes grief hurt so deeply. We get to choose what we focus on. And that conscious choice is such a wonderful blessing that I have tried to share and show with others over the years. When those moments come up, or I have people come to me, how are you still standing? Like, your life has just been a mess. You've been thrown every wrench under the sun. Yeah, you're right. That sucked. And I get to choose how I respond to it. I get to choose what I do with it. Um, it's not ignoring or avoiding those emotions. I spent far too many years getting called out by my daughter with, "What are you feeling, mama? How are you feeling?" To be able to just avoid those emotions. Um, so it's allowing them the space to exist and knowing there's value in them. And it is such a beautiful thing to be able to experience those highs and those lows because they are but juxtapositions of each other.
There's no words, no words, no words to say after that. Honestly, well put.
Thank you.
Well put.
So
Um,
2025 hopefully will be a year with a little less loss than what I've had thus far. And if not, then how lucky am I to still have things that are important to me, that mean something to me, that were impactful to my life. And it's realizing it's still a different journey. It's still a path that now looks different for me, um, for Cal, and trying to support her and her added loss too. Um, and just being grateful that I have the opportunity to experience it, whatever it is.
I want to thank you for sharing this story, to see it, to see it unfold along with its understanding. It's so beautiful. After years of working with people, to where there are huge questions, huge sorrow, loss, and to need to hold space in meditation, in hypnosis, to get to the reasoning. Why? Why did I lose my child? Why did I lose my leg? Why am I suffering? Why am I suffering? It's lovely. It's just so beautiful to see how you're dancing your life, accepting it all, and showing me again what I've come to know, that awareness is key.
Mhm.
Um, that it doesn't matter what gets given to you, or maybe the perception is thrown at you. It's as long as you have that awareness, then let it come. Through awareness, you have this magic bag that you can reach into and find whatever tool is needed for this thing that's staring you in the face right now, at any given moment. So it's absolutely beautiful just to hear your story and hear your understanding and get the reality of it, that it's not all roses and sunshine. Just because you're smiling, just because you're able to keep life going in a beautiful way, um, doesn't mean that things were made easier for you,
Mhm.
that you came in with these beautiful lessons to master, these I would say beautiful experiences. Of course, from a human's perspective of judgment, what's beautiful about them? How can they be beautiful?
Mm.
But the wisdom that has come with you, through you, I know that you notice it a lot in your daughter. Um, the souls that are coming in have come in. And of course, I see you as one of those souls. You're one of the newer souls that has come in and allowed these transformations to happen on this planet. That it's not once we're done with a lifetime, once we're on the other side, that we look back at this lifetime and, get it. You're getting it while you're in it.
Mhm.
And that is absolutely just amazing to witness. So thank you, thank you, thank you, um, for being a real live specimen right here. It's not a story in a book.
Right?
It's not I knew somebody who knew somebody.
And that's the funny part, right? We had started this with 20, 25 years ago, Jessica looking at, I have no purpose. I have no story. I have no testimony. This is useless. I've lived a relatively easy life in comparison, um, to a life completely shattering and having to be rebuilt within a 3-year window, and realizing the story will come when it is meant to. It's just a matter of whether we're willing to help write it.
Yes, and I think that's the important part, especially if, listening to the part about your childhood, because you'll hear stories of why things are the way they are, and somebody can point back to that moment in the childhood. For example, with your story, yes, you had a sister who did something, and it could have been the reason why you started using drugs. Or that you did the same thing she did because you looked up to her, or but that she got the attention, so you wanted that. Like, you could see that same story take
Mhm.
so many different paths, but you had that awareness. You followed what your soul came here to do, and you took this opportunity, let's call it, this thing that looks bad, because in our perspective, it is bad. But instead of judging it, you perceived it. You didn't judge your sister. You didn't judge the situation. You didn't judge your parents. You didn't judge who she was associated with or what was happening. I mean, you were more of a discerning that this is not good. This does not feel good. I do not want this for me. I do not want this for my parents. This is a flavor I don't want to taste again.
Yeah.
And so that awareness that you have, so sharp, so clear, that allowed you to be where you are here today. Are things tough? Yes. But are they tougher than they need to be? I don't think so, because you've done so beautifully. You've done so beautifully. In somebody else's story, this could have been even more messy, uh, dark, more, and this and that and that, and end up I fall back down, more potholes on the road. But that's not your story. And I see that we come here as a soul to have a human experience, not just to float on sunshine throughout life.
Yeah.
We're here to have these experiences. What's been happening as you look at the history of humanity is we make pain necessary. We make things get more tangled because we judge these situations as so horrible, and we add fear to it. And we add wanting to push things away instead of, like you said, feel your feelings. Even those, don't judge them. Just allow them to pass through so they can pass through.
And in those moments, being able to take a pause and going, I've started asking myself 2 questions when I'm in maybe not a great place, when I find myself struggling to reframe my perspective. And it always circles around this self-centeredness and following in self-pity of, why am I here? How is this happening? Woe is me. And it still is real. It is still a very real possibility of an attack. And as I see them myself start to get there, I start with, what if this circumstance or situation isn't about me? And if somebody else is involved, it gets me out of my own thinking of how somebody has hurt me or slighted me or potentially done any of these things to me, to go, well, wait a minute, maybe this isn't about me. This could be about them and their hurt or their pain or their loss. And instead of then continuing to internalize, I shift, and it brings about this desire to help or support another person and care for somebody else. And oftentimes that's where you find most people are reacting from a place of emotion and hurt. And it isn't about us, and allows for healing in a different way. Or the second question I'll ask if nobody else is involved is, wow, this sucks and hurts and is really dark and painful. And I get to be grateful. And in shifting into a mindset of gratitude, because anger and gratitude cannot coexist in the same place. And so instead of living in this very dark, heavy emotion for longer than I need to, I can shift and bring about this positive vision and light that I would much rather give off. Because when walking down the street, people pick up on those things. And you can see that of anybody. We've all passed somebody in the street and like, wow, they're having a really bad day. You kind of take an extra wide berth around the sidewalk, versus that person who is carrying that light of joy and happiness and peace and love to be able to share and give to others, and what that spark can do to ignite other people. That's what I want to be. And so it takes that conscious effort of acknowledging.
We know what I call that? Spiritual jujitsu. I'll tell you why. Not that I've ever done jujitsu, but my understanding of it is, instead of applying force, that energy that's coming, you redirect it. So when somebody's like coming at you to attack, You just place yourself to where you let their energy, their momentum, you redirect it, and all of a sudden they're on the ground, right?
Mhm.
So what these examples that you're telling me, what I'm seeing is that you're transmuting these energies. Here's an energy. And instead of adding to it, like, oh, it's so heavy, it's so dark, woe is me, you know, you're shifting its energy. Like, I've got something here. How do I turn it into a gift? How do I transmute its energy? Instead of matching it and taking it even lower, how do I find the gifts in it? And even that question itself brings up the frequency, because now you're not looking at how damaging it is and woe is me and why is it always me and all that stuff. But it's like, oh, what's in it for me? Well, like, well, where's the gift in it? And again, could be a gift for somebody else. And you are the one who is aware enough to, instead of take this thing and kind of splat back on their face and add to it, you get to see that part of them. It's almost their wound. And instead of shunning them, you're saying, oh, I see you and your wound. I'm not going to judge it. I'm not going to say this is, you're doing it to me. I understand you're coming here with your wound. I can help. I can
Mhm.
help by forgiving. I can help by holding space. I can help by just allowing you to be angry and letting you walk away without me having to spit back at you.
Exactly.
Right. And so that's with a person, and with a situation is like you, I love it. You're transmuting its energy. The human first perceives it as something off, something heavy, something dark. You let your human pick it up for a moment, and then you take it from your human. Like, hang on, it doesn't all have to be doom and gloom. What can we do with this? Does it stop us from going into work today? So we'll do this. Is it going to stop us from me sending her to school today? So we'll do this. Is it going to help us reflect in any way? Like, why is this showing up for me?
Yeah.
Not to me, not at me. So I love this spiritual jujitsu, this transforming, transmuting of energies. It's alchemy. You're doing it. You're shifting things. And again, it comes back to what you said before, your
Mhm.
awareness and seeing the gift in everything.
Mhm.
I love it.
We're far too complex to allow life to just come at us and take it for whatever it's worth and not use all of who we are as people physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. We have those gifts in us. We have those strengths. We have those aspects of our being. Why not use all of them?
Yeah. Yes. I love it. I love it. Now, again, we're not running away from life. We're here to live life. Let's live it with more ease and grace through
Mm.
awareness
Yeah. Not just for ourselves, but for others.
for others.
There's awareness around what one individual is going through. Who's to say for other people in that room or across that board table or in that restaurant aren't going through the exact same thing?
Mm. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. Now, don't forget, like, since we're in our own little bubble, that the other people
Mm.
are going through their own journeys, and just to show that kindness. If you have space to give kindness, to show kindness, then do so, because it could be that one thing that tips the scales for somebody else,
Absolutely.
right direction. Um, Jessica, let's close our eyes just for a moment. Let's breathe for a moment with the intention of, if there is any advice you would give to anyone listening to your story, what would you like to say? What advice is coming through you?
You are more than the circumstances you find yourself in. You are more than the feelings that you're navigating. And you have the strength and potential to continue moving, to continue loving, and to bring who you are to others.
Lovely. Beautiful. Love it. Oh my goodness. I'm glad I have tissues nearby, honestly.
I knew I would need mine, so I had very close.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Jessica, you know, for this time, for sharing your journey, your story. It's just so uplifting, honestly, that I don't know what other word to say. It is. I mean, yes, maybe the first reaction, and if I gave the summary of what's been happening to you to somebody is like, oh, you know, what a sad story. But honestly, and I know anybody listening to this will feel that just the upliftment.
Yeah.
Here's a journey and how wonderful it is. It doesn't make sense to the brain. How can you say it's wonderful? It is. It is. You've made it wonderful. You've made it worthwhile. And again, that question that you had in yourself before, why am I here? What am I doing? What is this even worth? What am I worth? Everything. Everything, not just to yourself, not just to the people in your life, your daughter specifically as well, your grandparents. I know I could feel them, especially your grandfather. I could feel him. I see it a lot come through sessions. We were doing hypnosis and connecting to the higher beings, higher realms. Is that we're sitting here in a little corner, nobody even sees what we're doing or hears. But as you're healing yourself, you're healing humanity. That's how it works. That's why you've come again to go through this particular story, to figure it out, to untangle it, to do it better than other versions of you, of us, of humanity has done it before. And so thank you for helping humanity. Thank you for helping all these souls figure this one part of the human experience.
Thank you for providing the space.
Lovely. Thank you, Jessica. There's nothing else I can say. I love you. Thank you so much for being who you are, for being on this planet at this time, and for doing what you do.
Thank you for what you do for me, for allowing it to be.
There's so much healing in this. There's so much healing in this. If for no one else than for me, but I will tell you, there's a lot of people who this is gonna be the right healing at the right moment for them.
Awesome.
All right, love.
Much. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Take care.
You too.
Bye bye.